Realtors, are you currently concerned about the class action lawsuits all over the U.S. that are taking place and how it might affect your current or future real estate business? RE/MAX Results General Counsel Ed Kaiser recently hosted an event that almost 500 of the realtor community attended. We have a recording of this event where Ed did a deep dive, about 3 hours, into the history of the real estate industry and history of past legal action that has shaped the real estate market. And it's a good explanation of how we got to where we are today and what to expect in the future. If you'd like a copy of this recording, simply send an email to podcast@results.net.
There's maybe 80 people in the room. Prayer time comes in at like 3:30 or whatever the time was in the afternoon. Everybody gets up, leaves the room. The lawyers are there. The closers are there. Everybody else is gone, and they go into the prayer room and pray.
Yes.
Then they come back and resume the closing.
Yeah.
Now, that was an interesting closing.
I'm here today with Pat Aylward and Fatoun Ali from our Eden Prairie location. Pat, you've been with RE/MAX Results for 35 years. So you're like the OG of RE/MAX Results. And Fatoun, you're the first guest on the podcast who is licensed with Results Support Services on Pat's team. So welcome. I'm excited to have you guys on the show because we are going to talk, you're our Muslim real estate agents. And we're going to talk a little bit about, Fatoun, your involvement. Actually, Pat, both of your involvements in the Somali community. And we're going to talk a little bit about no interest financing and just how we got here today. So, Pat, I'm going to pick on you first.
Okay.
The OG.
Okay.
So, what you started with RE/MAX Results in '89. I had to look that up.
Yes.
So you've been here longer than me. Where did you get your start in real estate? Was it with RE/MAX Results?
No. So I started in 1985 with Century 21 Borden in Coon Rapids.
Okay.
It's an interesting origin story, but I had just sold a tofu company.
Oh.
I had a tofu company that manufactured tofu for 7 years. And one of my partners in that was Phil Sorensen.
Oh, Phil.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so Phil became a co-broker of Century 21 Borden, along with Dick Borden.
Okay.
And I didn't know what I was going to do at that point. He said, well, why don't you, just start doing real estate and come to Century 21. So I did. I got my license and I was an agent at Century 21. He was the co-broker there. And it was there that I met Claude Worrell. Yes. And so Claude and I partnered up and we started working the REO business at Century 21 Borden. And then that business started growing and we decided to make a move and we interviewed at various real estate companies around town. And we met with John and Bill and decided that RE/MAX Results would be a great, choice for us. And we made the move to RE/MAX Results. And so I joined RE/MAX at that point.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
And Fatoun, tell me a little bit about how long have you been in real estate?
It's been 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you got your start with Results Support Services here with Pat?
Yes, I did.
Or how did you two meet?
So I had started working in the Somali community, and we can talk more about that if you'd like.
Yes,
and
I would like. Let's dive in.
I needed an interpreter.
Yep.
And so I don't even remember how I got connected with you, but somehow somebody recommended Fatoun for me, and so I first started using her as an interpreter.
Okay.
For my Somali clients, and so for a number of years she did that, and then it just her involvement just kept getting broader and broader. And then it was like, well, come and work for me and help me, in my business. And she did that, and for a number of years. And then she said, well, I think I'd like to sell real estate. I'd like to get my license. And so then she started working on getting a real estate license and got that and became an agent. And so her involvement just kept getting larger and larger and broader and broader. And over those years, I also started bringing in more Somali agents in Results Support Services. Yeah. So now we have a small team of Somali agents, and Fatoun is like our office manager and kind of oversees that team. And so it's just been a wonderful collaboration. She's not only an agent, but she's my friend.
So I also want to learn a little bit more about this. You are active in the Somali Youth and Family Development Center.
Yes.
Passionate about that?
Yes, I am very passionate about it.
Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
In 1998, when I came to the U.S., I was pregnant, 8 months pregnant. And I had a daughter who had a muscular dystrophy.
Okay.
I didn't speak English at that time. So it was hard for me to express my feelings and talk about my needs and through interpreter. So that's when the passion started, that I didn't want any women or anyone to go through what I went through. And I started learning English and working with the communities and nonprofits. And when I moved to Minneapolis, I started Somali Youth and Family Development Center to work with mothers.
You started this center. This is yours.
This is mine.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I
Okay.
started from scratch,
Yeah.
just mentoring youth girls from high school and middle school. And then I grew to bringing women support group.
At what year did you start that?
2009.
2009. So how many people have you helped now? Do you know?
A lot, over 5,000.
Wow. Okay.
Over that 5,000. So, and then we have resource center. We have cooking class. We teach girls how to cook. And now we teach mothers and fathers how to find the right schools for their kids. And tutoring and after school programs and activities. And it's been going really great.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I know that we sponsored something recently.
Remax
Oh,
Results
yes.
has contributed to
That was a
Fundraising event.
fundraising event.
Yes.
When is that taking place?
It was November 11th.
That was recently,
Yes.
November. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And I just remember how we met was Yusuf Wagat.
Oh, was it really?
Yes,
Huh.
yes.
Huh.
Yusuf Wagat, a friend of a long time.
That's how you.
So
okay.
that gentleman that she referred to has been key to everything for me, because Yusuf Wagad introduced me to the leadership of one of the largest mosques in Minnesota, Dar al
Okay.
Farouk. And at the time, the leadership group wanted to buy a building for the mosque in the community center. And we looked at different buildings, and eventually the one that they had been using was an old Lutheran church and school in Bloomington. And so we focused on that. Now, when I first started working with this group, I didn't know anybody. And so we were out looking at properties, and there was one tour that we went on. We came back to the Eden Prairie office. We were in the conference room. I was using the whiteboard and kind of explaining to them how financing works and different aspects of financing and things like that. And the group was all arrayed around the table. And one of the party was a man, a big guy, burly guy, who dressed in a white jalaba. And the jalaba is kind of the traditional clothing that you see. Jet black hair, big jet black bushy beard. And he looked like somebody you would look at and go, whoa, you know? Turns out, as I was talking to those guys around the table, he was the most knowledgeable of the group. And when I was speaking about financing, he understood what I was talking about. And he turned out, it was Brother Waleed, he turned out to be one of the sweetest, kindest people I've ever met. Very knowledgeable, very dedicated to the community. And it brought home the message to me that you can never judge anybody by their outward appearances. I mean,
Yes.
he was just the most wonderful person. So we embarked on the project of buying that school and church in Bloomington using commercial Islamic financing, which had never been done for a mosque in Minnesota prior to that time. It was a really arduous process, and it took us about a year to come to the closing of that. And at the closing, after all this time and all this effort, we closed at a mosque in Inver Grove Heights, which was the headquarters for the Muslim American Society of Minnesota. And there were the parties from both sides, the sellers, the buyers, their attorneys, so there were probably 30 people representing the seller and the buyer, and then probably another 50 people that are just community members that were just there for the occasion. And they brought in food, they catered food, and it was a closing like none other that I've ever attended for sure. So we're there, and this closing is occurring over many hours in the afternoon. Now, Muslims pray 5 times a day at certain times of day, right?
Yes.
So we're in this room with all the people. There's maybe 80 people in the room. Prayer time comes in at like 3:30 or whatever the time was in the afternoon. Everybody gets up, leaves the room, The lawyers are there, the closers are there, everybody else has gone, and they go into the prayer room and pray.
Yes.
Then they pray, and then they come back and resume the closing.
Yeah.
Now, that was an interesting closing.
Oh, wow. Okay. So can we, you said this was the first ever commercial Islamic financing.
Yes.
But let's just
purchase a mosque in Minnesota. Yes.
Really? And you
Yeah,
were a
and
part of
that was, for me, that was a start, because in the course of that transaction, I got to know these guys really well, and they're all my friends now.
Mm-hmm.
And not only my friends, but they're my associates. And they are people that are key people in the Muslim community in Minnesota. I mean, they're key leaders in the Muslim community.
Yeah.
And from them, in the community, it's all word of mouth. It's all, you know, I did something with this person, you can trust him, you know, go see him. It's all word of mouth. And so people just started coming. They just said, they call me Brother Pat. In the Muslim community, we refer to each other as brothers and sisters. And so in the community, I'm known as Brother Pat. That's how they refer to me. And so, you know, customers started coming in, clients started coming in, and things started happening. We created a nonprofit, a Muslim nonprofit called Second Community Resource. And its mission is to increase affordable housing opportunities for the Muslim community in Minnesota and increase financial literacy for the Muslim community in Minnesota. And I'm chairman of the board of that organization. And so we've done a lot of good work within the community and advocated for the Muslim community specifically in the areas of housing. And we can talk about some of the things that we've done in that regard if you'd like.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah. That sounds like an entirely separate podcast episode. It really does. Can either one of you, Fatoun or Pat, dive into? Just talk about Islamic financing, just because it's not. You know, I see posts on our private company Facebook group. Sometimes a lot of realtors are looking for assistance, direction where to go, and usually I'm typing your name and tagging you. Right. Pat, they need you.
So Islamic financing, there's a lot of different aspects of it, but the primary aspect that most people are somewhat familiar with is that in the religion of Islam, the religion doesn't allow for interest in financial transactions.
Yep.
But it does allow for profit, you know, and so that's acceptable. Now, when considering what an Islamic financial instrument is, people often think that what they're doing is taking a standard mortgage instrument, for example, and taking the word interest out and replacing it with the word profit. And that's not accurate. That's not what is involved in creating an Islamic instrument.
Okay.
Now, on the other hand, the way that Islamic lenders work with their clients is the same process as it would be for a conventional mortgage.
Okay.
They use the same lending standards. They underwrite by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac standards. There's no different in that respect. So the process is essentially the same process.
Okay.
The lender is making a profit on the transaction, and how that happens is that in an Islamic transaction, there is a process by which the lender comes into title and then turns around immediately and either leases, or there's different ways that the transaction is structured so that the customer is then making payments, you know, to the lender. And so there's a change of ownership for a millisecond. Okay. That's a distinction than the way conventional mortgages are done, and that allows it in other respects too, to be an Islamic transaction.
To be considered the interest rate.
Exactly. Now, when Islamic lending was pretty new to Minnesota and it was pretty unfamiliar to realtors, I would get calls from agents who were involved in a transaction, and a lot of times they weren't even RE/MAX results agents, and I wasn't involved in the transaction at all. Agent would call me up and say, I'm making this offer to a seller. I'm using Islamic financing. I don't understand what it is. They don't understand what it is. Would you explain it to the listing agent? And I did that quite a bit in those days, because real estate agents didn't really understand it.
So now, do you use does the second community resource that you mentioned?
Yes.
Does that provide that service?
No.
Or
What Second does is we have had down payment assistance programs that can be paired with Islamic financing, and so we have done that.
Okay.
What what we also did is after we closed on that mosque in Minnesota, that was done through the financing of University Islamic Financial, which is one of the larger Islamic lenders in a number of states, including Minnesota. At that time, they weren't doing residential lending in Minnesota. The only Islamic lender was Guidance Residential.
Yes.
That's it. No one else.
Yep.
So we closed that deal, and there was an obvious need I saw for Islamic residential financing. So I arranged a conference call with the president of the bank, University Bank, and the principals at University Bank that on the commercial side that helped with the transaction we had just closed. And I pitched them Minnesota. I said, you guys need to open up residential lending in Minnesota. And they said, no, the market's not big enough. There's no market there. And I said, there's absolutely a market here.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to open it up. And they said they were pretty skeptical. And then 9 months later, they opened their first office in Minnesota.
Wow.
And shortly after that, Devon Bank, based in Chicago, also Islamic finance, also opened up an office in Minnesota. So now we had competition. And now there was a choice for customers in which Islamic lending institution they might choose to go to.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
While we're on that topic, I people listening to the show, where can they go to get more information about both your Somali Youth and Family Development Center and the Second Community Resource? Websites, email address. What's the best way for listeners to seek more information?
Website, SOMFAM, SOMFAM.org.
Somfam.org, SOMFAM.org.
Yes.
Okay, and that's for the Youth and Family Development Center that you started. What are some goals you have? What for 2024?
2024, it's going to be a really great year because we have this first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers money coming in, and a lot of families are excited about. So right now, me and my kids, my both young adults are also realtors with our team, Pat.
All right.
My son, he's a realtor.
Family. Yep.
Family business. So we started a family business in St. Paul.
Okay.
And so we help the community get prepared for the down payment assistance that is coming in. So working on their credit, working on their income, making a saving as a down payment.
Yep.
So we get them prepared.
Okay. And that's it. Are these a new assistance classes that you're doing in 2024, or are you doing that now, did you say?
No, there's organizations that are specifically doing home stretch classes.
Okay.
Neighbor Works.
Okay.
In East African Economic Center.
Okay.
So those organizations are getting the money as an organization.
Okay.
So I send them there to do their home stretch classes. Get them home stretch.
Home stretch.
Home stretch
So
classes.
with a lot of the down payment assistance that's available, you need to do an educational component.
Organization called African Economic Development Center.
African Economic Development Center. Okay.
And then Neighborhood Works.
Okay.
Those are two big organizations. And also, second, those three business organizations are nonprofits that work with down payment assistance. They have to finish a workshop.
A workshop to qualify.
Yes, to qualify for a down payment assistance.
Okay.
One of them is home stretch.
Yep.
And the other one is financial counseling.
Okay.
And it's at 8 hours for those classes, a whole day. So they go through that. Once they qualify, then we start the process.
Wonderful. The next question I was going to ask, but I think you guys have already answered, is just talk about, services that you guys provide that differentiate you, Pat and Fatoum, from other realtors in the community, obviously, besides your involvement with that.
I mean, we work with our clients for, residential properties, buying and selling, commercial properties, buying, selling, leasing.
Okay.
And we're able to, we have, knowledge in, if people want to use Islamic financing, how to do it both in the residential arena and in the commercial arena, which is a little bit more complicated. And so we have that expertise to offer, those services to any of the clients that we work with.
Have you ever thought about doing classes? Or you are doing classes for buyers and sellers, but what about for other realtors?
That's interesting. I mean, I haven't thought about that.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
But I think that's something we definitely could think of. Yeah,
I think that would be really neat.
Yeah.
Maybe create some kind of special designation. Not everybody can do this. Yeah. Tell me a little about Pat. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Richfield.
You did?
Yeah. I was born in Chicago, but we moved to Minnesota when I was 2. And I grew up in Richfield. Our first house was in East Richfield, and eventually we ended up in West Richfield.
Okay.
Over the years.
Yeah.
And so I went to Richfield schools. After high school, I went to McAllister College in St. Paul.
Yep.
And started my tofu company.
And you said in 1985, or before 85, you were doing tofu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was that even a thing back then?
That's the thing. It wasn't a thing.
I mean,
back
now
then.
it's.
So people didn't know about tofu back then. I mean, we were pioneers for sure in that arena. I would go to the co-ops and do like food demos in the co-ops. This is tofu. This is what you do with it. This is how you use it.
You're standing at the corner at Mississippi Market saying,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah.
And Fatoum, share a little bit about growing up.
I was born and raised in Somalia. And when the Civil War happened, we moved to Kenya. And 2008, I came to Minnesota and California.
Okay.
So I've been in California for 8 years, and then I moved to Minnesota, and I've been here since 2006.
Okay. Did you have family that came with you, or were you on your own? What?
I was on my own. I was on my own when I came.
Okay.
And got married and had babies, and then moved to Minnesota where the community is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did because the community is growing. We're becoming a home buyers, and we have businesses. And my kids are learning their native language and learning about the religion and contributing to the community. And my community is pretty new to home buying process. So there is a lot of work that we do, me and Pat, and do helping them understand what home buying process is and helping them about credit and how it works and just walking them through the whole process. And it's just different from somebody who grew up here and knows about savings and knows about credit and financing and all of that. Where we have a lot of family that came in the country the last 10 years, and they're large families.
Yeah.
And apartments don't fit them anymore, so they're buying homes, and we're just helping them through the whole process as a baby step.
Let me just say that, Fatoum kind of gave you an overview sketch of her life. She came from a war-torn country.
Yeah.
And what she's been through in her life is things that most of us can't even imagine.
Yep.
And just the challenges and the hardship that she's faced and how she has persevered through it and done so and come through that without any sense of bitterness or any sense of animosity, but rather with this incredible heart that she has and a dedication to serving people and serving the community. She's an inspiration, not only to me, but she's an inspiration to everybody in the Somali community, and she's known in the Somali community. People know her for who she is, what she gives, and what she offers, and she's an extraordinary person, and it's a privilege for me to be associated with her.
Thank you. It's a privilege. You're making her emotional right now. It's an honor to have you working with us too.
Thank you.
Outside of selling real estate, what do you guys like to do for fun? Why do you laugh? Well, you have another side to you, Pat.
Yeah, I do have another side. I'm involved with a Sufi community, very involved. And Sufism is, it's an aspect of Islam. It's kind of a universal aspect of, most people understand Sufism if they're familiar with the poet Rumi.
I'm not familiar.
Sufism is about opening up the heart and really embracing life and all people without judgment.
Okay.
The Sufis were the ones in the history of Islam that largely held were responsible for creation of literature and poetry and music. centers of learning throughout the world. And we're known for really listening to and embracing other viewpoints. And they would have educational universities where Jews and Christians would study alongside Muslims. And Sufis have been known for that for years. In fact, Sufism is very prevalent in North Africa and in Somalia, where Fatoum is from. And so I'm very involved in local and national and international Sufi organizations, and that takes a lot of my time. And the rest of my time is I have 2 girls, one of whom lives in Los Angeles, one of whom lives in West Palm Beach, and a 6-year-old granddaughter. And so they are the most wonderful aspects of my life.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. How about you?
For me, I have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. So spending time on cooking with them and writing my books. I'm writing...
You're writing a book?
Yes, my memoir. We're working on Pat is reading.
Yeah.
Good.
We're almost done. I'm helping also writing another book, which is helping East African Muslim women, Somali women, to empower them, encourage them, uplift them, and give them resources and tips. And how I did, what the things that it has helped me a lot. And that's really going to be coming up next year sometime.
Okay.
And then I love cooking. So
Yes. What's your favorite dish?
I love
to cook for others.
Thai food.
Oh, okay.
I love I love learning new stuff.
Yep.
So Chinese food, Thai food, East African, Ethiopian food, and Somali food. So one of the other book is How to Eat Healthy, because we're from Africa and our diet is so different that a lot of people are getting diabetes, cholesterol, blood pressure, and all of those. So I'm teaching them how to make a healthy, quick meals. And also, we don't have a lot of time. We're not back home where we have 3-4 hours to cook and make a delicious food. And here we're running around and doing multiple things, teaching them really quick meals that is tasty and healthy.
All right. Very good. Now, I'm going to get some advice out of both of you. Fatoum, what's your advice for potential home buyers or sellers, for the clients that you serve, where they should start?
I think they should start with checking their credits. And their finances, and if they qualify, and find somebody that is willing to listen to them and guide them, because a lot of the clients that struggle and they don't know what they're going through or what they're getting themselves in, because they think it's just buying a home is an easy process. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of knowing about your credit, and mistakes sometimes clients make are buy stuff, big purchases, buying a car, buying a furniture before they even do their closing. And that dips into their credit. And some of the clients just, do not qualify after going through all of the process because just a mistake they made by buying a purchase of, buying a furniture to decorate their house or getting a new car.
Yeah. I'll include your contact information in the podcast episode too for listeners that want to reach out to you directly. Okay. And Pat, for your advice, what's your advice for other realtors? What did you do to become so successful starting back in 1985?
I mean, real estate.
What you did then versus people entering real estate now, has it changed much or no?
I mean, yes and no. Real estate is not an easy business. And I've been through lots of cycles, ups and downs. But when I meet with people that are considering entering real estate, one of the things that I always emphasize to them is that the most important thing is you always need to consider the interests of your client first before anything.
Yes.
Is that there's a lot of pressure, especially when you're a new agent, because our money comes and not regularly, but comes now and then maybe then, and it can be hard. I've been through that, and I know that it can be hard. And I always emphasize that if you consider the interests of your client first, even if it costs you money, even if it costs you a closing, you're going to be much, much better off in the long run. And I found that to be absolutely true for myself. Advice. And I always emphasize that. And so anybody that comes onto our team that value is always front and center. And I always make that clear, and everybody that works for us has that value and keeps that value. The interests of the client are paramount, and we always put them first.
Are you guys looking to grow your team?
Maybe. What I'm looking more to do this next year is to be a better mentor and be a better leader and teacher for the people that are with me now. And, people, as the time is right, they'll come. I'm not worried about that. But my goal is to be better in that respect for next year.
I want to learn a little bit more about Second's community resource. Pat, could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. So Second has created programs to help people in the Muslim community understand what financial literacy is. We've addressed some of the issues about affordable housing. We've created our own down payment assistance programs. And we've been an advocate for this community, for the Muslim community. There's a number of ways that we've done that, and one of which is that we've been in front of Minnesota Housing, MHFA, for years. Mm-hmm. And we've said to them, you have this down payment assistance program that's great, and it's statewide. Anybody can use it anywhere in the state. But if somebody wants to use Islamic financing, no interest, they can't use your down payment assistance program. And that's a problem. Mm-hmm. And we've been in dialogue with them for a while. And there was some resistance. This is too hard. We can't do it. But in the last couple of years, they are now working on an Islamic, it's not called Islamic, it's called a no interest lending product. And they're working on that. And
that has down payment assistance.
Yes, that can be paired with Minnesota Housing, MHFA down payment assistance.
Okay.
And they're maybe about a year away from having that product. And so this is the culmination of about 5 or 6 years of conversations and meetings with them.
Wow.
And this is a big step. And so we've had a key part in having that come to fruition. Mm-hmm. One of the other advocacy areas that Second has been involved in is that, we talked a little bit about Islamic financing and how it works, and the Islamic lenders in our community compared to, traditional lenders, Bell Mortgage, Wells Fargo, whoever, are much, much smaller. Their back office operations can be not as efficient as conventional lenders that we're used to dealing with, and it can be somewhat of a taxing or sometimes frustrating experience for the client. And in response, some clients have started using third-party investors who will buy a home on and then sell it to the consumer on a contract for deed. Okay. And that has been a practice that has been growing in the last 3-4 years. Now, some of the investors are doing that are good, and they're honest, and they're fair. Others are not. Mm-hmm. Others are charging rates and adding fees onto it that are really predatory. Fatoun visited with one of them in a city in Minnesota.
I think I saw this in the news
and
or some story recently.
She was talking, and she's sitting there. She's a Somali woman in her job, and he's telling her how much money he's going to make on this program and how these people don't really understand what they're doing, and he can make, 50, 60, 70,000, 80,000, 100,000 on a deal, and how he's going to retire in 3 or 4 years this. He's saying this to her. Mm-hmm. Second, contacted the Minnesota Attorney General's office and alerted them to this. And there is now a task force that is looking at this and looking at making changes in the nature of contract for deed transactions in Minnesota to try to avert any predatory lending practices. And we were instrumental in having that happen.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
And Fatoum, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're an inspiration.
Thank you.
And it's been really nice having you guys on the show.
It's been really nice being on your show.